From Naomi to Harley Quinn. From Nellie Leroy to the blonde in pink. How did she bamboozle the figure skating judges? And what's the story behind her body art? What drew her to a spoof flick? And where in the world does quilling fit into all of this?
They know my embarrassing hobby that I quill.
Hold on to your popcorn. We're diving into the tale of the Aussie enchantress who took Tinseltown by storm, Margot Robbie. How did a small-town girl from down under find herself queen of the big screen? Fasten your seatbelts, because our plane is heading to the small Australian town of Dundee. It's here that our starlet Margot made her world debut on the 2nd of July, 1990, neatly sliding into the role of the third kid in the lineup. Tragically, her folks decided to part ways when she was just knee-high to a kangaroo, so Mama Robbie single-handedly wrangled 4 kiddos. Guess that's why Margot ended up playing farmer with Granny and Grandpa for most of her childhood. Our girl soon figured out that school was more of a backup plan for self-improvement. So at the ripe old age of 7, she hightailed it into a circus academy. Less than a year of swinging around later, she was brandishing a trapeze certificate. But Margot's not a one-trick pony. While she somersaulted in the air, she was also riding the waves and whacking balls on the hockey field. Field hockey in Australia, now that's a high-risk hobby. But then again, isn't everything in Australia kind of death-defying?
But like this one time my mum came, I was in my bratty teen years and my mum came in and said, oh, can you help me get the snake out of the house? And I was like, Mum, I'm really busy on MSN, like, no. And she was like, it's a big one though, like, can you, and I was like, so busy, Mum, no. And then she like went away and 10 minutes later, I was like, where's Mum?
Oh no.
And that's when my mum got eaten. No, she didn't. She was fine.
Oh my God.
So picture this. Margot blows out her 18th birthday candles and she's like, I'm out of here, Grandpa's farm. Sydney, here I come. Boom. She lands a gig on City Homicide.
They said I can go home after this. My mum's coming to pick me up.
Oh, that's good.
But we're talking small potatoes, not the meaty roles. Follows it up with Elephant Princess and these flicks, ICU and Vigilante, that she'd probably pay good money to bury in a time capsule. But hey, not too shabby for a newbie's first run on the small screen.
Yes, of course.
Next, picture this. Margot, yearning for the Canadian pines, hops onto a flight for a little vacay. No sooner does she step off the plane than her phone goes brrr, and whoom! She's won the part she auditioned for a couple of days earlier. She's on the return flight before she's even sniffed that sweet Canadian maple air. Enter Neighbors. The soap that's older than a VHS copy of Home Alone collecting dust in your parents' basement.
I don't think so.
Looks basic, but it's launched more careers than a NASA space program. We're talking Guy Pearce, Russell Crowe, Kylie Minogue, the whole shebang. Margot gets her foot in the door with what they thought was a walk-on part, but our girl Margot knocks their socks off. So they're like, quick, rewrite this thing before she gets away.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, with no space bars in between.
She ends up in 327 episodes, turns into Australia's sweetheart, and even picks up some shiny TV awards. Cue 2010. Donna's story wraps up with a yawn-worthy happy ever after.
Love you guys.
But who cares about Donna? It's Margot Robbie, the diamond from down under, ready to conquer Hollywood. So after wrapping up on Neighbors, Margot packed her bags and headed for the City of Angels. She managed to land a role in Pan Am, a TV series about the heyday of the iconic airline. But unfortunately, this gig was short-lived, fizzling out after only 14 episodes, barely long enough to even remember character names.
Is that necessary?
However, despite the series' early demise, it helped Margot get her face on the map. Recognition, check. The next thing she knew, she was cast in About Time, which marked her first rendezvous with the charming Domhnall Gleeson.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! 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 No!
This minor role is Margot's grand debut in the world of celluloid. The real game changer, though, came when she clinched a role in Martin Scorsese's masterpiece The Wolf of Wall Street, sharing screen space with the king of Hollywood, Leonardo DiCaprio. During the auditions, Margot got so into character, she landed a firm slap on Leo's face, barking, "Fuck you!" But instead of getting a one-way ticket out of there, Leo actually appreciated her commitment and even asked for an encore.
Fuck you, you fucking bitch!
Scorsese initially planned a seductive scene with Margot modestly draped in a robe, but she insisted on going au naturel, arguing that for Naomi, her body was her chief asset. A bit of liquid bravery, 3 tequila shots to be exact, and she was bearing it all for the first time on camera. Yes, we censored it all. You'll need to rent a movie for that part of the story.
Yeah?
Yeah.
However, the aftermath wasn't as smooth. She panicked and spun a yard to her family and friends about how her head was graphically imposed on a body double for the naked scenes. She told them the truth just before the premiere.
So take a good look, Daddy. You're gonna be seeing an awful lot of this around the house.
Erotic problems seemed to chase her during the filming of this movie. Margot recalled that after a few takes of that scene, her back was covered in dozens of scratches left by the sharp edges of the counterfeit bills. But despite the trials, her portrayal of Naomi was a hit, and her agents found themselves buried under a pile of scripts.
You like it?
Yes!
Taking another leap up the ladder of fame, Robbie found herself in a war-scented romance drama, Sweet Française.
You are beautiful. What is your name?
Celine.
The plot of this film is a screenplay adaptation of Irene Nemirovsky's novel. The fascinating thing about this novel is that it was published in 2004, but it was written 62 years earlier. The author was tragically sent to Auschwitz, from which she never returned. So her daughter stumbled on this hidden treasure of a manuscript years later, and boom, we got ourselves a heartbreaking movie.
All I do is work. If I didn't have love, I don't care where he was born. They're human, just like us.
Even though Margot was back on the supporting act, this heart-wrenching tale let her drama queen shine. Plus, she's getting cozy with assistant director Tom Ackerley on set. And fast forward 3 years, we got a wedding in 2016. It's all sunshine and rainbows in Margot's love life, but her career? Not so much. First, she gets a thanks but no thanks for the role of Ella in Cinderella. Then Emilia Clarke's Sarah Connor kicks her butt to the curb.
I hate that.
And to top it off, she turns down Birdman for this post-apocalyptic shindig, Z for Zachariah. Now imagine it. Margot Robbie, Chris Pine, and Chiwetel Ejiofor all surviving in a post-apocalyptic world.
Good work. Work.
A love triangle in a world that's gone to hell. Sounds fascinating, doesn't it?
John, it's amazing.
It's gonna work.
Well, it didn't quite hit the mark it was aiming for. In fact, it barely hit any mark at all. Z for Zachariah turned out to be more of a blip than a blast. Instead of playing in theaters worldwide, it only got screened in the US. A little bit of a bummer. And the revenue? It was as if someone found a few dollars in their old jeans, around $100,000. Not the kind of figures that make you leap for joy, right?
Okay.
A bit bummed out by a string of professional setbacks, Margot and her brother decided to chill out on an island in Croatia. But true to form, before she could even dip a toe in the water, she got a call for an audition. In a frantic 20 minutes, she packed her stuff and scoured the coastline to rent a catamaran to get off the island. After a 6-hour wait for her flight, 2 stopovers, and another 12 hours, she finally arrived in New York. And in a classic comedy of errors, her luggage got lost, and she had to go to the audition in beach shorts and an old t-shirt. But she arrived on time. Will Smith, on the other hand, was late. When he entered the room, he said, "Sorry, I was coming from Queens." Margot quipped back, "Well, I just flew in from a damn island in Croatia, but I'm here on time." This feisty retort was likely what snagged her the role in the crime comedy Focus.
Smile. Thank you.
So Margot signs up to play Jess Barrett, a novice con artist getting lessons in the art of swindling from Will Smith's seasoned scammer, Nikki Spurgeon.
And our job is to dance in the darkness.
I didn't feel you take that.
Focus isn't just about pulling off the con of a lifetime. It's also about a passionate and complex love story brewing between these two rogues.
I've never seen anything like you.
Thank you.
Now, Focus may not be a heavy hitter in the grand scheme of Hollywood's heist films, but both Robbie and Smith underwent pickpocket training from Apollo Robbins. This guy's a real-life con artist and considered the best in the world. So the grifting scenes you see in the movie are as legit as they get. Off-screen, Margot and Will hit it off like a house on fire. Their friendship just as dynamic as their on-screen chemistry.
You're not a serial killer, are you?
How many times does it take to get to cereal?
5?
Oh, no, we're good.
This camaraderie helped Focus make its mark at the box office, but wasn't enough to make a movie something you'll remember in a month.
Wow.
It's okay.
Oh. All right. Oh, wait, hold on. Give me
right.
1 second. Give me a second.
So in 2015, Margot is there luxuriating in a bubble bath, tipping back some 2-decade-old Dom Perignon, while dropping financial wisdom in The Big Short.
By the way, these risky mortgages are called subprime. So whenever you hear subprime, think shit.
And that's it, her one-woman show for the year.
Okay. Now fuck off.
Now, fast forward to 2016. Our Aussie daredevil Margot punches in with a sort of wicked short flick. It's actually a Vogue ad brilliantly named Australian Psycho. Now she's not doing anything criminal. No, she's just cheekily taking a swing at Patrick Bateman's morning routine.
My name is Patrick Bateman. I'm 27 years old.
My name is Margot Robbie. I'm 25 years old.
I simply
am not there.
Speaking of routine, there's nothing psycho about subscribing here. It's practically mundane. Practically.
Something wrong? Patrick? You're sweating.
Next, she passed up a bigger splash to swing from the vines with Alexander Skarsgård in The Legend of Tarzan.
I was excited to work with animals and Margot Robbie.
I love the order that you put that in. Thanks so much.
Animals. Margot Robbie.
I know, sounds exciting, right?
Lovely.
Wrong. Critics chewed it up and spit it out. Didn't exactly light up the IMDb charts either, but it broke even, so there's that.
I'm so lucky. So lucky.
Then along comes Suicide Squad, and Margot hops aboard the crazy carousel as the Joker's unhinged squeeze, Harley Quinn, without audition.
What?
No joke. I suspect her buddy Will Smith might have put in a good word.
Harley Quinn, nice to meet ya.
Or maybe it was her childhood gym classes that paid off. Girl was swinging through the scenes like a seasoned trapeze artist. And in her spare time, she was just learning to fight, shoot, and even beat David Blaine at his own game by holding her breath underwater for 5 minutes. Let's not forget her 3-hour daily date with the makeup chair, transforming her into everyone's favorite psychotic clown princess.
And?
As the cherry on top of this Sunday of suck, she got threatened by a bunch of comic book nerds who were convinced her playing Harley was like casting Stallone as Hamlet. But lo and behold, once the movie hit theaters, they ate their words. Still, she wished someone had given her a heads up about the whole creepy comic book fans can be mean thing. After rapping, she and a few of the crew got inked with Squad tattoos as a memento of the roller coaster ride.
We're bad guys. It's what we do.
Then came the release of Suicide Squad, and well, the critics told the studio it was no bueno. Despite managing to break even, it caused such a ruckus that some started suspecting a conspiracy against DC and Warner Brothers, and cast members started to Google the nearest tattoo removal salon. But you know those guys. They just rolled up their sleeves, unfazed, and got to work on a solo Harley Quinn story. More on that later, amigos. Later that year, the war comedy Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, or should we say WTF, put Margot in the boots of Tonya, a kick-ass war correspondent straight from the battlegrounds of Afghanistan. What's more, she was doing a tango on screen with none other than the queen of comedy herself, Tina Fey. Now, this movie is like a tour de force through the chaotic world of war journalism, based on the memoirs of the real-life Kim Baker, played by Faye. It's not just about dodging bullets and grenades, folks. It's about the nitty-gritty of newsmaking under fire, literally. It covers the not-so-glamorous underbelly of the media's wartime shenanigans, a whole different kind of war zone. I'm talking about an embedded press kind of embedded, if you catch my drift.
Fuck off.
Next up, Margot took a nosedive into the world of figure skating to play Tonya Harding in the flick I, Tonya. This wasn't just a small dip in the acting pool, folks. It was a cannonball that had her splashing right onto the Oscar nomination list. Going full-on redneck, she made mullets look chic. More American than a bald eagle wearing a trucker hat.
What's people's impression of me? That I'm a real person.
Not only that, she had to learn a whole bunch of figure skating stunts. But let's face it, she was more like a shrimp trying to reach the moon than a professional ice princess.
Fuck 'em, I'm skating better than ever.
Hours upon hours of training only let her execute the easiest moves, while CGI had to step in for the more complicated ones. Why, you ask? Well, the few figure skaters who could pull off such complex stunts were all tied up preparing for the Olympics.
You suck. What is this, Rednecks on Ice?
As for the movie itself, it's like riding a roller coaster in the dark. It's disorienting, thrilling, and makes you laugh and cry at the same time. It's definitely a must-watch with its clever spin on real events, gifting us possibly the best tragic comedy of 2017. Normally, films like this have a snowball's chance in hell of making money, but I, Tonya, proved to be the snowball that survived.
I was loved.
And who can forget Allison Janney? She stole the show as Tanya's mom, nabbing herself a shiny Oscar in the process.
I'm not paying for you to act like a whore and live off me for free. Ugly fucking whore.
Oh, please, show me a family that doesn't have ups and downs.
An interesting side note, when Tonya Harding herself watched the movie, she recalled a certain scene and personally confessed to Robbie that she wished it had actually happened that way.
Maybe you should pick another sport.
Suck my dick.
Don't keep saying that. Oh, all right. Oh, I don't know what time. My absolute privilege to be part of this, and no, thank you.
Now, roll the credits and roll them again, because Robbie didn't stop there. She hit the silver screen again, playing in Goodbye, Christopher Robin, a tale about the writer of our beloved honey addict, Winnie the Pooh.
I'm Billy Moon, and you're Teddy Bear.
Edward Bear, if you don't mind.
I don't like that name.
You do know it was me talking, not the bear. I was just playing, you see.
She again teamed up with our red-headed Domhnall Gleeson, this time playing his better half.
Well, that is just the beginning. He has been terribly, brilliantly busy.
And you thought redneck accents were tough. Well, Margot chewed up the posh 1920s British accent and spit it out like it was her native tongue.
You said you were bringing us here to write something. So, write something.
Man, 2018 was like an all-you-can-eat buffet for Margot. She was part of everything, setting a personal record for roles in 1 year. It all kicked off with her going all Bugs Bunny alongside her ginger buddy Domhnall Gleeson in the lively animation Peter Rabbit.
Yeah, it's actually a bit confusing.
Then Our Lady Robbie took part in what appeared to be a cinematic rebirth of the Outback classic Crocodile Dundee.
Good day, losers.
The project, intriguingly titled Dundee, the Son of a Legend, Returns Home, seemed to bring back all the rustic charm and star-studded thrill of an authentic Aussie adventure.
What do you mean Dundee's lost in the Outback? He is the Outback.
Nobody talks about Mick like that.
So, during the most American event of the year, the Super Bowl, these trailers start hitting the screens. $30 million dropped on this cinematic spectacle, and I gotta say, it got folks excited. But when the Super Bowl cheers faded and the nacho crumbs were swept away, things started looking less like a summer blockbuster and more like a travel brochure. That's right, mates. Turns out the whole Dundee hoopla was as real as a $3 bill. A smooth move to woo the fat wallets of American tourists to the land down under. This wasn't a movie, it was the most expensive star-studded Australian ad. It was like thinking you've scored front-row tickets to an unreleased Tarantino flick, but it's actually a documentary about his foot fetish.
This isn't a movie. No. It's a tourism ad for Australia.
Yes.
Sure, it left some fans crying into their Fosters, but you gotta admit, it was one hell of a twist.
Whatever.
As if that's not enough action for 1 year, Robbie punched her producer card and stepped into the leading role in the neon noir thriller Terminal.
Bless me, Father, for I have sinned.
A rookie director, Von Stein, who had been an assistant on sets like Sherlock Holmes and The Danish Girl, thought he had the chops to pull it off.
Exactly.
Throw in the always awesome Simon Pegg and the legendary Mike Myers, and it was supposed to be a home run, right?
Yeah, that sounds tasty.
But instead of a grand slam, it was more like a swing and a miss.
Yeah, you just have to, try not to think about it.
Oh, okay, I'll do that then.
Critics had a field day roasting everything from the plot to the editing. Margot's performance was the only saving grace, although she got a finger wagged at her for selecting such a doomed project. With no time for a pity party, Margot kept the hits coming. After a FaceTime with Simon Pegg in Slaughterhouse Rules,
Yeah, sorry, sweetie, sorry, that's Rebel Fighters must be back. I have
Audrey, Audrey, please, don't go.
she dashed off to sparkle on the red carpet for the premiere of Mary, Queen of Scots. Picture this. You're in the middle of the world's oldest reality TV show, The Real Housewives of Ye Olde England, featuring two badass queens, Elizabeth I and Mary Stuart, fighting for the crown like it's the last donut at the craft services table. Margot Robbie takes the cake, or the crown, as Liz, the redhead with a chip on her shoulder, being the offspring of the infamous neck fancier Henry VIII and his short-term wife, Anne Boleyn. Robbie, in an extreme role prep, mastered an accent older than her grandmother's corset, spends more time in a makeup chair than a Kardashian, and becomes a pro at quilling. Because nothing screams I'm royal like ancient arts and crafts.
Do they know my embarrassing hobby that I quill?
What do you think?
Lovely.
Then it's Saoirse Ronan's turn in the royal relay, playing Mary Stuart, Queen of Scotland, and Liz's reluctant sibling in Sovereignty. Ronan carries the bulk of the story, but her tale would feel incomplete without Elizabeth, like Batman without Joker or Game of Thrones without final season. Wait, scratch that last one. The climax of the film, the Queen on screen face-off. Now that's a show you can't miss. Kind of like the battles in Braveheart, but with more corsets and less swords.
And I'm very angry about it.
To create a more sincere, incredible effect, the actresses decide not to see each other before the filming and not rehearse together. The schedule was specially constructed to first shoot all the scenes with Margot and then with Saoirse. The result was simply electric. Of course, historians had to be party poopers, pointing out that this royal meet cute is pure fiction. Apparently, the queens only communicated through written burn books, never locking eyes. But seriously, who'd want to watch a movie that's essentially a 16th century subtweet showdown without any Wi-Fi? And while the film wasn't exactly a box office champ, the behind-the-scenes wizards, makeup artists, and costume designers got their moment in the limelight. They crafted a Renaissance so lifelike, you could practically smell the Shakespearean ink. Now we're kicking it back into the swinging 60s, Los Angeles, USA, the setting for Margot's next cinematic adventure. And for those pop culture vultures among us, you've already connected the dots, haven't you? Yep, we're pulling back the curtain on Quentin Tarantino's 9th filmic gem, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Unlike her co-stars who had the cushy gig of playing made-up dudes Rick Dalton and his wingman Cliff Booth, our gal Margot had a different challenge to sink her teeth into. She had to dig deep into the life and times of Sharon Tate, a Hollywood it girl whose story ended in tragedy, shocking the glitzy world to its core.
In a scene described by one investigator as reminiscent of a weird religious rite, 5 persons, including actress Sharon Tate, were found dead at the home of Miss Tate and her husband, screen director Roman Polanski.
She was murdered in her own pad by the Manson family, a crew of homicidal hippies, while she was just about ready to pop out a baby. Talk about a true Hollywood horror story, man. Margot's mission was to bring Tate back from the dusty annals of history, even if it was only for a few fleeting flicker frames.
I'm in the movie. I'm Sharon Tate.
That's me.
And let me tell you, Margot nailed it so hard, it's like she had a personal vendetta against that nail. It was so authentic, so real, that Deborah Tate, Sharon's sister, was moved to tears. Deborah felt as though she was seeing her sister alive again 50 years later. Now, if that isn't the definition of a stellar performance, I don't know what is.
To me, Sharon's purpose in the film is to show the best things of the 60s. She represents the free love and the open door policy that was Hollywood at the time, you know, the parties, the fun, the community, you know, arms wide open, and then how horribly her death kind of was the end of that era, and gates went up and doors closed, and Hollywood changed forever after that.
And if your Geekometer is still buzzing for more juicy deets and behind-the-scenes trivia, check out the 3rd chapter of Tarantino's biography on our channel. Next up in the Margot Robbie highlight reel is Dreamland.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
But let's set the record straight. This ain't your regular Hollywood blockbuster. It's a unique concoction cooked up by an ambitious rookie director with our darling Margot wearing not one but 2 hats, as the producer and the star. But despite having a solid cast, eye-catching visuals, and a storyline with more drama than a daytime soap, this flick didn't exactly set the world on fire and slipped through the cracks of public attention. Swapping her producer's hat for a cameo in Dollface, Margot served us some spiritual enlightenment with a gorgeous dollop of irony, proving yet again her chameleon-like talent.
Want to know when you're gonna die?
Oh, no thank you.
Then, in a colossal mashup of Oscar-winning proportions, she joined forces with Charlize Theron and Nicole Kidman. Their mission was no less than a deep dive into the notorious Fox News scandal, aiming to put the spotlight on the increasingly prevalent issue of harassment, Hollywood's very own boogeyman.
And late today, word of a major change at Fox News. CEO Roger Ailes has handed in his resignation. First, the sexual harassment lawsuit brought by Gretchen Carlson, then Fox star Megyn Kelly.
Now let me paint you a picture. Charlize and Nicole decked out as Fox News divas Gretchen Carlson and Megyn Kelly. And who's the maestro behind this transformation?
I really want to know.
Kazuhiro, the man, the myth, the Oscar-winning makeup legend. The end result? An uncanny metamorphosis that had audience second-guessing their identity.
Really?
Charlize was so convincingly disguised as Megyn Kelly that some spectators bet their bottom dollar that it was Elizabeth Banks under all that makeup.
Oh, wow.
Now that's what I call an Oscar-worthy deception.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor.
On the other side of the spectrum, Margot was crafting a compelling portrayal of the fictional, ambitious journalist Kayla Pospisil.
Which side is the actress? I can't tell which is.
It was a real transformation.
Which is the character?
Yeah, I know it's.
How do you do it?
Caught in the crosshairs of her lecherous boss, Roger Ailes, a character magnificently portrayed by John Lithgow, Margot's performance was nothing short of breathtaking. Director Jay Roach wrapped up his pivotal scene in a single take from multiple angles.
Good. Now, pull your dress up and let me see your legs.
Saving Margot from the distress of reliving such a humiliating encounter multiple times. Chivalry isn't dead, folks. Alas, despite the star-powered cast and the pressing theme, the film struggled to keep its head above water at the box office and received lukewarm reviews. Critics pointed their fingers at a few script inaccuracies, yet they couldn't ignore the performances of Margot and Charlize, acknowledging their efforts with Oscar nominations for Best Leading and Supporting Roles.
You okay?
So at the end of the day, our ladies still emerged victorious. Well, if you're a Hollywood hottie like Margot Robbie, it's practically written in the stars that you'd be strutting your stuff in a perfume ad, right?
Yeah.
Just like her fellow silver screen siren, Margot added some of her distinctive glamour to Chanel's legendary fragrance campaign.
The essence of a woman. Chanel.
Sure, she didn't outshine the Chanel No. 5 ad, but hey, she's Margot Robbie, so we know there's always another act coming.
Yeah.
Since 2018, Margot hasn't just been a guest star in Chanel's world, but a bona fide brand ambassador. She's championed everything from the campaign for active leisure and winter sports clothing line to teaming up with the radiant Penelope Cruz. This year, they have been the faces of Chanel's luxurious watch collection.
Hey, Margot.
How many seconds does it take to fall in love?
3 to 15 seconds.
Now that's a dynamic duo that can make even the ticking of a clock sound glamorous. When it comes to major events and star-studded premieres, Margot again turns to her trusted ally. She's often seen gracing the red carpet draped in Chanel's elegant creations. She might not have clinched the title of ultimate style icon yet, but anyone who's seen her would agree that her grace and beauty are indisputable. As she continues her journey in the limelight, who knows, the fashion crown might just be hers to claim. Rolling forward the calendar to 2020, Margot picks up the bat to knock it out of the park in the Suicide Squad spinoff. She's running the show as Harley Quinn in her very own R-rated Riot Fest.
Down in Gotham with the birds of prey, where all the bad bitches come out to play. With a hit, kick, and a knee in the dick. Come see our movie, it's gonna be sick.
It's a love gone wrong kind of deal, see? Harley splits up with Joker, and without his psycho protection, she's got every Gotham baddie knocking at her door, itching for a piece of payback pie. But Harley ain't gonna be the same old dish served cold. She's undergone a fashion revolution. Gone are the skimpy short shorts and the t-shirt that was practically shrink-wrapped around her. Instead, she's sporting the quirky charm of overalls, coats that shimmer like a disco ball, and pigtails that scream, "Party in the back." Her partner in crime? No, not the Joker, but a hyena. And not just any hyena, but one played by an adorable German Shepherd. Comic buffs would be quick to tell you that Harley's original got 2 of these cackling furballs, but the movie budget allowed only one adorable monster named...
You named him Bruce after the country man guy. He's named her Duncan, aren't you?
Now this Harley is like a kid in a candy store, having more fun than should be legally allowed, and her affection for her canine-cum-hyena sidekick scores some major karma brownie points. But the fun doesn't stop there, oh no. Margot decided to kick it up a notch and learned roller skating. Okay, she wasn't Tony Hawk on wheels and did need a stunt double for the fancier tricks. A girl's gotta know her limits, right? The challenges kept rolling in. Next up, a not-so-innocent burger. For this bad boy, the kitchen swapped chicken eggs for duck eggs, all thanks to Margot's allergy. So when you see that scene, know the lengths they went to. It's what I call an extra effort. The film also tips its hat to a couple of classics.
A kiss on the hand, maybe quite
Gentlemen Prefer Blondes,
a girl's best friend.
And the more cryptic Moulin Rouge. It's as if Ewan McGregor moonwalked from the Mulan set straight into this one. And let's talk about McGregor. The man wears the black mask like he was born with it.
Right.
And we got a whole bunch of comic favorites. Victor Zsasz, Cassandra Cain, Huntress, and Black Canary.
You're really, really good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive a bit deeper. This flick, it's like the sister from another mister of Deadpool, designed with an unmistakably feminine twist.
Her. Fourth wall break inside a fourth wall break. That's like 16 walls.
Our Harley, she's got a lot in common with Mr. Merc with a mouth. If you squint just right, you'd see a mirror reflecting back.
Oh!
Neither of them are your textbook, straight-laced Cape Crusaders. They are the class clowns of the superhero world.
My boyfriend said this was a superhero movie, but that guy in the red suit just turned that other guy into a fucking kebab. Well, I may be super, but I am no hero.
You're right. Harley is right.
Their humor? It's more bent than a $5 yoga class. They aren't do-gooders with grand plans. Rather, they've got this weird mojo where good things just tend to happen around them. Like a crazy sequence of serendipitous events, a magical soup of coincidence and dumb luck. It's like the universe is a pinball machine and they're just bouncing around creating chaos and anarchy, and somehow they keep racking up points.
It was dumb luck, but still, that felt pretty great.
And that's why we, the audience, can't help but root for them. There's a little bit of Harley and Deadpool in all of us. That rebellious streak, the devil-may-care attitude, the love for chaos. It's what makes them, for lack of better words, incredibly relatable and empathetic.
Bravo.
Sadly, though, the flick didn't quite light up the box office like the 4th of July. It didn't manage to rake in the big bucks despite the studio's hopes and dreams. Sure, the budget was a little leaner than your average DC production, but it still took a nosedive. COVID didn't help either, putting a damper on the screenings, especially in Asia. But director Kathy Yan had a different read on it. She thought the movie was too woman-heavy for the audience, that they just weren't ready to see so many dames kicking butt on the big screen. Some folks took it as a slight, a jab, an offense.
Those guys, you're gonna be just fine.
But Margot, our Harley Quinn, she ain't done playing yet. She's still laced up and ready for the next round. So the bell rings and Harley Quinn shimmies back onto the silver screen, unveiling new facets of her mad, multicolored personality. It all started when Warner were sitting pretty with the original Suicide Squad. I tell you, despite the critics being madder than Howard Beale and Network, the movie made green at the box office, so our good folks at the studio had their fingers hovering over the sequel.
Kind of a red flag.
Enter James Gunn, a fella who'd already proved he can whip up a storm with Guardians of the Galaxy. Hot off the heels of a Disney dismissal over some questionable tweets, the clever clogs at Warner Brothers swooped in faster than Superman on speed and reeled in the disgraced director. Gunn was offered a pick of projects and went straight for the Suicide Squad. Now, this sequel wasn't just reheated leftovers, oh no. Gunn set a whole new table unburdened by the first Suicide Squad's missteps or even the feisty events of Birds of Prey. The guy had his head buried in DC Comics, conjuring up a motley crew of villains that were as wonderfully weird as they were woefully inept. The top brass had one request, though. Our gal Harley Quinn stays in the picture.
Gracias.
Margot Robbie was back, delivering a performance that sparkled more than a satchel of kryptonite. Let me tell you, she had a scene that even her stunt double might have thought twice about. You might think it's a double's job in the final cut, but no siree, that's all Robbie, showing you can't chain down a force of nature. So who makes up the new squad? Blackguard, Javelin, Savant, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, Thinker, TDK, Polka Dot Man, and yours truly's favorite, the Weasel. Quite the rogues gallery, wouldn't you say? Not just them, though. Some familiar faces made the call sheet. Joel Kinnaman's Rick Flag, Jai Courtney's Captain Boomerang, and Viola Davis, they all came back to stir the pot. He even managed to rope Taika Waititi as Ratcatcher and the one and only Sylvester Stallone, adding a splash of CGI magic to voice the hulking King Shark.
See? Hey, he's learning Spanish.
Our main gig is set on the made-up island of Corto Maltese, a place that's more Cuban than a Havana cigar. For the jungle scenes, they built a set bigger than 3 football fields. They even created an artificial beach complete with fake waves and a tropical forest. Rumor has it that these were the biggest sets Warner Brothers ever built. The director just shrugged and said it was necessary since filming in actual tropical conditions would be too unpredictable.
Come on, he's obviously lying.
Let's flip back to Margot for a second. Gunn didn't just settle with our Harley being the same old mischief maker. Nope. The Quinn we see this time has a bit of a makeover.
Oh, wow.
Gone are her iconic facial tattoos and Pippi Longstocking-style hairstyle. Now, she had low-hanging pigtails that swing like a shampoo commercial, and makeup that screams Alice Cooper called he wants his style back.
Oh.
And let's not forget about the wardrobe change.
Put this on.
Quinn swapped her traditionally loud rompers for a ravishing red dress and a rebellious leather jacket that'd make a biker gang jealous. The architect behind this punk chic ensemble? None other than Judianna Makovsky, the visionary who brought you the wardrobes of Harry Potter and The Hunger Games.
Oh.
Besides the chain lockpicking scene, Robbie was bouncing around, sprinting, taking a plunge into icy waters, and wrestling with top-tier goons, all while laughing like she just heard the funniest knock-knock joke ever told. But let's face it, that's all just another Tuesday for anyone in a James Gunn flick.
I don't want to be your brother.
But Gunn's not just all about the laughs. Dude throws in some hardcore war drama and a stars zombie apocalypse just to keep us on our toes. Plus, he somehow made us see every baddie as more than just a pretty or not so pretty face. He got us rooting for the underdogs, showed us that even the baddest of the bad have a little good in them, and for the third point, well, Gunn reminded us that the Suicide Squad franchise is the best thing to happen to bad decisions since Tequila.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
And let's not forget HBO's Peacemaker series. Trust me, that's a binge watch waiting to happen.
Oh, Peacemaker!
Yes.
You're that racist superhero!
Oh.
You only kill minorities, man!
So, where's Margot headed next, you ask? Picture this. She's taking a U-turn down Nostalgia Boulevard after 12 years, finding herself on the stomping ground of her humble beginnings. Shooting almost as many episodes as there are stars in the sky, the TV show Neighbors went out with a bang, bidding adieu with its final chapters.
Years living on Ramsey Street were honestly some of the best of my entire life. And I love you guys so much.
But in true TV drama fashion, it played a gotcha on us. Just when you thought you'd seen the last of it, bammo! Like a zombie, it came right back, declaring that it found a new broadcasting home and will keep hungrily hunting for our brain cells.
I'm back! Some things never change.
Now, shifting gears to 2022, our gal Margot's bagged a fresh gig with David O. Russell for this flick, Amsterdam. She teamed up with Christian Bale and Denzel Jr., John David Washington, to bring a motley crew of a doctor, a lawyer, and a kooky nurse to the silver screen.
I'm the doctor. She's the nurse. He's the attorney. We all met in Belgium.
The plot? A heady cocktail of war, political intrigue, shady secrets, and decisions that changed the world.
Let's hope this goes well.
Although the characters seem as real as unicorns, the shenanigans they pull might not be all fiction.
Is there any truth to that at all?
Absolutely.
In part.
Part?
For example, De Niro's character, General Gil Dilbeck, is based on the real-life General Smedley Butler, who testified in 1934 about a conspiracy against democracy and President Roosevelt. Russell based his script on this historical chronicle.
I don't like to say I told you so, but this is all turning out to be a lot larger than any of us imagined.
Let's talk about David, a man whose reputation in Tinseltown could be described as, well, challenging. The dude's had more on-set feuds than a soap opera has love triangles. Remember the time he locked horns with George Clooney during Three Kings? Clooney was just trying to play Captain Save a Crew, but nearly earned himself a shiner from Russell for his efforts. Then there's that infamous dust-up with Lily Tomlin on the set of I Heart Huckabees. I mean, who knew David could drop so many F-bombs in a single sentence? It was like watching an explicit version of the alphabet.
I worked on this fucking thing for 3 fucking years, not to have some fucking cunt yell at me.
And we can't leave out American Hustle. Amy Adams was pretty candid about how rough it was dealing with David's version of directing. It made us wonder if Jennifer Lawrence was a saint, a masochist, or just had really good noise-canceling earplugs.
She's so excited.
Very excited. Inappropriately excited.
But hey, everyone loves a hero, right? Enter Christian Bale, coming to the defense of Adams like Batman swooping in to save Gotham. Maybe that's why Margot agreed to work on Amsterdam. Knowing Batman's got your back might make dealing with Hollywood's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde a tad more bearable.
Oh, good for you! And how was it?
Okay, I'm still not certain what do you mean?
Even amidst the Russell tempest, Margot shone brighter than the Hollywood sign in Amsterdam.
This is a good part, but the bad part will come again one day. But for now, this is the good part. In Amsterdam.
The flick got a thumbs up for its performances. The actors, costumes, and cinematography were all stealing scenes left, right, and center. The plot, though, well, not everyone was keen on untangling that narrative yarn.
This is so strange.
Could it be that the plot ended up resembling a spaghetti junction because the shooting schedule got jacked up by the pandemic?
Yeah.
The crew was literally chased off the set by the police.
Yeah.
Margot let slip in one interview that their permit had run out, but David just kept hollering, "Action!"
Please, darling, could you stop filming?
Oh, well, we're documenting the night, Libby. Could be a historical event, you know.
David pushed the shooting schedule back almost a year, relocating the whole shebang from Boston to LA and inflating the budget from a hefty $50 to a staggering $80 million. Unfortunately, the box office returns didn't match the ambition. Amsterdam only raked in $31 million, leaving the studio with a financial hangover.
And that's a terrible affliction I don't wish on anyone.
So Margot didn't have the time to sit and weep. Why? Because in a blink and you'll miss it moment, she's back on the red carpet strutting her stuff for a new flick in 2022. Now, who do we have pulling the puppet strings? It's none other than Damien Chazelle, the man with a plan, and this time, he's bringing to life the glitz and glamour of the Roaring '20s, a time when Hollywood was dancing to a new tune, switching its beat from silent films to melodious talkies.
Hello, college.
Chazelle had us hook, line, and sinker with a trailer that was a sight for sore eyes. It boasted a star-studded cast so bright you'd think the Milky Way had a tough competitor. This was Hollywood in its unchained form, a rebellious teen pre-Hays Code, a saga of decadence, a journey into the sinful shadows of Tinseltown. Now they baited us with an audiovisual extravaganza, a promise of ecstasy. But I've got to spill the beans. It was more of an audiovisual faux pas. But hey, where did it go wrong?
Yeah, tell me why.
Let's take a trip down memory lane. Back in 2009, Chazelle's brainchild was a flick about this era. But all he had to his name was a debut musical, Guy and Madeline on a Park Bench. The bigwigs wanted him to lighten up on the Babylon script and rewrite it as a musical, and voila, La La Land was born. After he'd hit a home run with that, along with a few other chart toppers, Chazelle managed to get the cash to bring his original idea to life.
We did it, okay?
Our man wasted no time. He sent his scripts to the set of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for Pitt and DiCaprio to peruse. Pitt jumped in feet first. DiCaprio gave Tobey Maguire a sneak peek, who then decided to don the producer's hat and play the villain. Now enter Diego Calva, the dark horse. Who's that guy, I hear you ask? Well, Diego has graced the screen in Narcos, Mexico, and made his mark in a few European film festival shorts. The role fit him like a glove, and he aced the wide-eyed innocence of a newbie stepping onto the sacred grounds of Hollywood.
You haven't been on a movie set before? No? You'll see. It's the most magical place in the world.
And what about our leading lady, Margot? She arrived fashionably late to the party, stepping in for Emma Stone. The Big C, as in COVID, played havoc with the shooting schedule, and Emma had to toss Babylon from her juggling act.
Unfucking professional.
Not one to be deterred, Chazelle got creative, giving the character a complete makeover. Clara Bow, the real-life 20 star Emma was supposed to play, was out. Instead, we got Nellie Leroy, a character crafted like a patchwork quilt, with bits and pieces borrowed from different actresses of the era. The tear-on-demand scene that was a hat tip to Margaret O'Brien, Hollywood's original drama queen, who could cry a river at the director's command, and that jumpsuit that seems to have time-traveled from a different era. It's inspired by Bessie Love, another Golden Era actress, who, despite playing the innocent, wasn't shy about showing some skin. Nellie even gets Jean Harlow's nipple-rubbing life hack.
I ain't icing my nipples. This is natural. You're just sore because yours look like fucking latkes.
But the meat and potatoes of Nellie's life story are still mostly borrowed from Clara Bow, complete with a rocky childhood and a mom with mental health issues.
Hi.
So Margot nailed her role in a way that had Hollywood big shots penciling in her name for an Oscar. But, plot twist, Robbie didn't even score a nod. Now, Babylon burst onto the big screens neck and neck with James Cameron's latest Avatar sequel and the Whitney Houston biopic, I Want to Dance with Somebody. Sadly, our underdog took a hit and bagged way less than what was hoped for. No shocker, right?
Why not?
Look, I'm not saying Babylon was a turkey, but let's face it, the film had its issues. Picture sitting through an uncle's endless fishing stories. That's the film's runtime. The plot was more naive than a Disney princess with some scenes borrowed from a rated X movie. But let's not be too harsh. Every movie, like a good sandwich, has its meaty bits. There were some incredible scenes. Some of them is pure chaos, showing us the birth of cinema in all its messy glory. There's another where Brad Pitt's character attempts to crawl back on set. And let's not forget about the scene where Margot has to transition from a mime to a chatterbox and nails it like she was born for it.
Scene 17, take 7.
Action. Hello, college.
No, you're marked.
Ah! Fuck this shit!
Here's a hot take. The movie biz theme is overused as a one-liner in a sitcom. You want to exploit it today? You got to serve up a film that's more perfect than a Bob Ross painting. Damien's Babylon would have hit the bullseye if the artist hadn't already taken the Oscar for a similar theme in 2012. Sure, he tried to paint the film industry with a different palette, but the taste turned out to be as flat as a pancake. Now, keep your eyes peeled because we're getting a double dose of Margot in 2023. First up, Margot treated us to a delicious appetizer as Wes Anderson's Asteroid City. She sparkled as a 1950s local TV star in this love letter to the golden age of Americana.
It's you, the wife who played my actress.
My scene was cut after one rehearsal.
Anderson's film was a quirky, nostalgic joyride, which was released on June 22nd, 2023. Next, great news for anyone who thought their Barbie and Ken were just too darn happy in their dream house. Hollywood has finally given them the existential dread they've been missing. And we're going to talk about it now. A lot. Yeah, I'm talking about the Barbie movie. This isn't your run-of-the-mill, hey kids, let's sell some dolls kind of deal. This is Greta Gerwig, the queen of indie cinema, locking eyes with Margot Robbie, the human equivalent of a glitter bomb, and going, you know what? Let's make Barbie question her existence.
Do you guys ever think about dying?
So Greta's sitting there probably thinking about the profound complexities of human emotion or whatever indie directors think about, and along comes Robbie with an idea so wild, it's like suggesting you put ketchup on your ice cream.
Hi.
But the catch? It actually sounds good.
Barbie day one.
They're not just aiming to slap a pink dress on screen and call it a day. No, sir. They're diving headfirst into the Barbie-verse, ready to dissect every plastic inch of her controversial legacy. Finally, a script where staying still and plastic expressions are part of the character development. Now, picture Warner Brothers stepping in, kind of like that friend who overhears you planning something stupid and says, I want in. Mattel's over in the corner nervously handing over Barbie like she's a family heirloom that's survived 3 generations in a house fire. Please, they whisper, bring her back in one piece. The script? Oh, it's written by Gerwig and Noah Baumbach. Because when I think Barbie, I immediately think of the guy who directed The Squid and the Whale.
The portions are very big here. You only need half an order.
Okay.
It's like finding out Shakespeare decided to write for SpongeBob.
Knights, jesters, 12th century!
So let's begin with the casting. Robbie, doubling as producer, insisted on a democratic approach for choosing the lead, despite clearly being born for the role of Barbie herself.
Okay, I'll get in the box then.
All right. Yes.
She raises the question, how could Margot have possibly said no to what amounts to the ultimate fashion parade? After all, Barbie goes through more wardrobe changes than a pop star on tour. Each outfit is a chapter in her journey from plastic to person. It's not just fashion, folks, it's storytelling.
Yeah.
From her hair to her heels, every choice is a clue to Barbie's evolving identity.
I'm not stereotypical Barbie pretty.
Note to the filmmakers, Margot Robbie is the wrong person to cast if you want to make this point.
Enter Ryan Gosling, who, in a moment that might seem lifted straight from a surrealist painting, finds himself staring at the melancholic scene of a Ken doll face down in the mud, a squashed lemon lying in state beside it. In a twist that feels more like a scene from an indie film than real life, Gosling snaps a picture of the defeated doll and its citrus companion, sending it to Greta Gerwig with a message that could only come from the heart of Hollywood's quirkiest. I shall be your Ken. His story must be told.
Did you bring your rollerblades?
I literally go nowhere without them.
Issa Rae is also here, along with Simu Liu, Sharon Rooney, Dua Lipa, Michael Cera, John Cena, Will Ferrell, and at least half of the cast of Sex Education, including Margot's own doppelganger, Emma Mackey. And last but certainly not least is America Ferrera. Ferrera plays Gloria.
It is literally impossible to be a woman.
Gloria is the hero we didn't know we needed, waging war against the patriarchy with nothing but her wits and a monologue so fiery it could roast marshmallows.
I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us.
Now here's where it gets juicy. Despite Barbie being a goldmine of talent, the Oscars decided to play hard to get.
Yeah.
They snubbed a few deserving folks from the movie,
Yeah.
but Ferrera's unexpected Best Supporting Actress nod is certainly one to celebrate.
Okay, great.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah. I think we're good, right?
Enter Sarah Greenwood and Katie Spencer, our production design wizards, who probably had the most bizarre shopping list ever. One Barbie dream house, check. A gallon of fluorescent pink paint that nearly caused an international shortage, check. Artificial water, artificial beach, and even artificial fridge, check, check, and check. First off, they had to nail down the feeling of Barbie Land. You know, that surreal, everything is perfect vibe.
It was inspired by old Slim Aaron's pictures and that 1970s Palm Springs sort of kind of vibe of leisure and clean lines.
And did you notice how Barbie can barely fit in her convertible without knocking her noggin? It turns out to make Barbie's world a reality, everything had to be shrunk down by 23%.
To get that toy quality, because if a Barbie was to stand in a house, a hand can touch the ceiling.
Now let's talk about Ken's renovation. It's basically the bachelor pad of your childhood dreams.
Leather couches, protein powder, massage guns, video games.
The Barbie dream houses are built beautifully. They have like a very calming and soothing aesthetic. Ken's Mojo Dojo Casa House is like someone vomited masculinity all over it.
This shall henceforth be known as Ken's Mojo Dojo Casa House.
You don't have to say dojo and house and casa.
But you do because it feels good.
Now let's talk about cinematography. You know, Rodrigo Prieto got hit with what I call creative whiplash. One minute he's working on Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. The film is so dark that it makes The Shining feel like a family vacation. The next thing you know, he's diving into the bubblegum world of Barbie. If you want to see what can really make Barbie question her existence, just introduce her to DiCaprio's character.
No, just the way you are that bothers me. That's what it is.
No, I'm supposed to help you and make you happy and powerful.
It's just that I don't like talking to you. That's mostly it.
Oh.
Now brace yourselves as we tiptoe from the realm of, wow, that's some snazzy camera work, into the rich, almost scandalously clever landscape of filmic nods and winks. In the dawn's early light, a scene unfolds that screams, Mr. Kubrick, I admire your work, but I will make fun of it in the most unsuitable way possible. Yes, Gerwig creates her own Dawn of Man with adorable little girls and a doll instead of a bone. But wait, there's more. The Mattel CEO's office isn't just a room, it's a nod to Dr. Strangelove. It's as if saying, remember the atomic bomb? Cute, but have you heard of Barbie? No sooner do we bid adieu to Kubrick's shadows than we're greeted with a marquee that screams The Wizard of Oz. Yes, those are posters in the background, but this isn't just a tip of the hat. It's a full-blown curtsy to the classics. Barbie embarks on a journey that mirrors Dorothy's, except the bricks underfoot are a shade of pastel pink that even residents of Oz would envy. As if borrowing a page from Midnight Cowboy, our duo, Barbie and Ken, find themselves navigating the gritty reality outside their plastic paradise. Their fish-out-of-water tale doesn't merely echo Joe Buck's adventures, it paints them in a bubblegum hue.
I have to. Will you excuse me? It was really nice talking to you.
And speaking of identity crisis, let's talk about Ken, whose existential quandary is laid bare for all to see, humorously encapsulated by his mugshot label, And Ken. In a world where he's perpetually the plus one to Barbie's spotlight,
It's Barbie and Ken. There is no just Ken.
And how did this inner conflict reach its peak? Naturally, through a soundtrack moment that's less about background music and more about a full-blown identity crisis expressed through melody. Enter I'm Just Ken. A track that started as a joke during a coffee break but ultimately became the anthem of our plastic protagonist soul search. And who's behind this masterpiece? None other than Mark Ronson, the guy who produced Uptown Funk. He thought, let's give Ken a voice, and ended up giving him a whole concert. Ryan Gosling turns out to be a musical wizard, too. His persuasive charm isn't just for the screen, it turns tunes into gold. Pair him with Slash, and suddenly you've got a song that's not just playing in the background of Barbie's world, but leading the parade at the Critics' Choice Award.
I'm just Ken, Barbie.
And just when you thought our dive into Barbie's pink-infused world couldn't get any richer, we hit the jackpot, the financial bonanza that made Hollywood's jaw drop. Margot Robbie takes home a paycheck over $50 million. But how did she land such a treasure trove? Okay, let's talk numbers, because Barbie didn't just make waves, it unleashed a tsunami on the box office. Picture this, a global haul of over $1.4 billion with a domestic take that's enough to make any studio exec weep with joy. And if that's not enough to have you spitting out your popcorn, its opening weekend alone bagged $356 million worldwide, smashing records as the biggest debut for a film helmed by a woman. Greta Gerwig, take a bow.
Oh my God.
Now let's waltz over to the Golden Globes, where Barbie didn't just show up, it strutted in. High heels and all, snagging the first ever award for cinematic and box office achievement. But why stop there? The Critics' Choice Awards were next, and Barbie's Pink Parade didn't come to play, it came to dominate, securing 18 nominations. That's right, it didn't just edge past cinematic titans like The Shape of Water and Everything Everywhere All at Once, which each had 17, it pirouetted over them, setting a new benchmark. And because we're living in a world where Barbie's ambition knows no bounds, the Academy Awards rolled out the pink carpet, offering up 8 nominations. The buzz was electric, sparking playful debates across Tinseltown and beyond. If Barbie does take home the gold, are we talking a plastic Oscar?
I don't know.
As for what the future holds, more waves to ride, more hearts to win. Buckle up, folks. Margot's just getting started. You've watched the whole hour and skipped liking and subscribing. All right, last chance. The video's fading out. 3, 2, 1. Oh, you need more time? No problem. Let's start over. 99, 98, 97.